student loans are not the end of the world. It's great that we have the ability to achieve an education, to work toward an education. The problem is you got to pay for it somehow. I mean, obviously the opportunity's there. The question is whether or not it's a good decision to take out student loans to pursue the education. We have over $1 trillion of student loan debt in this country right now. From what you'll hear in the news and the blogs and everything, it's not all in default. It's $1 trillion of debt. I don't know how much is in default. I'm not even going to try to figure that number out because it's not all of it. I know a lot of people who are paying back their student loans. I know a lot of people who are paying student loans in bankruptcy. I know a lot of people who are paying student loans outside their bankruptcy. I know a lot of people who are paying their student loans without filing bankruptcy. But at the same time, I also know there's a lot of people now who are starting the process of getting into what's called an income-based repayment plan. This is something offered by the Department of Education on those the federal student loans. You also have private loans. Folks, if you can avoid a private loan for student loans, avoid them like the plague. Get away from them. Don't sign them. Make sure you have what are called federal student loans. The reason why is the federal government gives people an opportunity to work within the system and get rid of some of the student loans. Maybe be eligible for a discharge. Definitely get into an income-based repayment plan. I mean, if you go to school and you come out of school, let's say a college student comes out of school with $100,000 of student loan debt, and they get a job making $25,000, $30,000 a year. They want to get married, they want to have kids. There's no way possible this person's ever going to be able to repay the student loans even if you, well, the interest rate is one thing, but even if you give them an opportunity, maybe they could afford $100, $150 a month, the interest is going to be more than that. So this is, again, a huge problem in the United States, and it's something that needs to be addressed by Congress immediately. Now, the reason why I say Congress is because the only way to really get rid of student loan debt in bankruptcy is to go through what's called the Brunner test, and it's a hardship. You've got to prove to the court that you have a significant hardship, it's lasted a significant amount of time, that you've looked for work, and that there's, quite frankly, just no work out there for you. A lot of cases have been brought trying to pass the Brunner test, and the majority of which have been shot down, saying no, due to one prong or second prong or the third prong of the Brunner test, you are eligible for work, you could work, you should work, you could do something to pay these student loans back. Now, I don't know if the overriding policy behind that was to encourage people to pay back student loans. You know, don't file bankruptcy on your student loans and try to get this hardship discharge, because we're not going to allow it so easily in the bankruptcy courts. Because that's really the only alternative for people other than repaying some or a portion of it. Now, what about, what if bankruptcy is not an option? What do you do with your student loans? Well, there's a lot you could do with the student loans, believe it or not. The first thing I want to know is how much student loan debt are we talking about? How much is private loans and how much are federal loans? Once we make that determination, I'm hoping the majority or all of your student loans are federal loans. Why? Because what I can do is work with the Department of Education on your behalf to try to get you what's called an income-based repayment plan. It's possible, if you're eligible, to get a $0 repayment plan through the Department of Education. And once you're on that plan, each year you recertify saying, yeah, I qualify for a $0 repayment plan. Now, is this for everybody? Of course not. Of course not. But if you do qualify for it, you get into the program depending on what type of job you've had in the past, or you may be eligible in 25 years to get their total student loan wiped out. So don't think student loans are hopeless. And the reason I say that is because I have a young lady who said, what if I just walk away from my student loan debt? You can't. I mean, you could just fall off the face of the earth and say, hey, I don't want to pay my student loans back, so I'm not gonna. Trust me, they're gonna catch up with you. They can sue you to garnish your wages, they can take your tax returns. It's not pretty, and they could make your life a living hell. It would be better for you to work within the system, try to figure out a repayment plan. I mean, let's say, for example, you're a police officer. Police officers are eligible to get rid of their student loan debt after a 10-year income-based repayment plan. Okay, why not? That to me is an encouragement. If you want to be in law enforcement and say, hey, I'm going to make a career out of this, I'm going to get as much education as I can, I think you're encouraged to go ahead, take out the student loans, get the education, repay back for 10 years, and the rest of it gets wiped out. So, I mean, there's a lot of things out there about student loans that people don't know. the overwhelming stuff of what you're going to hear is, oh, you can't get rid of them in bankruptcy. I know that. And we have a lot of people who file bankruptcy and repay a substantial portion of their student loans in bankruptcy. And that's perfectly legitimate. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But you've got to sit down with an experienced attorney and determine what needs to be done with the student loans.